Society thrives on categories, leaders and followers, dominant and submissive. But then there's the Sigma male, an anomaly, an enigma, a force that answers to no one. He carves his own path, indifferent to hierarchies, free from the constraints of pack mentality. This relentless autonomy grants him a rare kind of freedom, yet with every step away from the crowd, he sheds another layer of warmth. What begins as quiet detachment slowly solidifies into something colder, something more untouchable than even he anticipates. Sigmas usually pay attention to what people say in anger, because Sigmas know they have been dying to tell those words. So what causes a Sigma male to slowly grow colder over time? Here are 10 reasons why Sigma males slowly become cold-hearted. They realize the world fails to meet their standards. In his early years, a Sigma male might still be open-minded about finding genuine connections or communities that align with his vision. However, as he navigates social circles, workplaces, or even family gatherings, he repeatedly encounters mediocrity, shallow values, or contradictions. Each disappointment reinforces a bitter lesson. Most people and structures don't match his ideals. While others might shrug and compromise, he grows quietly disappointed over time. Instead of lowering his standards, he'd rather isolate himself, convinced the broader world simply can't or won't meet the bar he set. They bear hidden scars from past betrayals. Early on, a Sigma might attempt trust, extending a hand in friendship or risking vulnerability in love. Unfortunately, betrayals and letdowns tend to strike him hard because he invests so selectively in people. When those rare bonds fracture, the pain cuts deep. He might blame himself for letting his guard down. From each betrayal, he emerges more vigilant, more convinced that closeness is a liability. These hidden scars become a driving force behind his coldness. Rather than admit the hurt, he keeps it buried, forming a quiet resolve to never be caught off guard again, even if it means freezing out potentially good relationships in the process. They struggle with shallow social norms. Most of society thrives on comfortable rituals, forced small talk, casual group outings, or routine events. The Sigma doesn't find real value in these gatherings. He senses they're more about appearances than substance, leaving him unfulfilled and mentally drained. He may show up out of courtesy, but it feels like a chore, not a choice. Over time, he distances himself from these activities altogether, leading others to see him as standoffish. This perpetuates a cycle. The more meaningless social norms he encounters, the more he withdraws. Eventually, he can appear downright dismissive of group traditions, accelerating his drift into emotional solitude. They push themselves to master every weakness. Sigmas place immense stock in self-reliance, refusing to be at anyone's mercy. Whenever they identify a personal shortcoming, be it a lack of skill or a tendency toward emotional openness, they tackle it head-on. If it's a skill gap, they train meticulously. If it's an emotional weakness, they clamp down on it. This relentless self-improvement can appear admirable, but it also fosters a stark, ruthless mindset toward themselves. There's no room for good enough or leaning on others to help fix problems. Over the years, that unyielding discipline can freeze their emotional side, making them see vulnerabilities in themselves and others as flaws to eliminate rather than windows for shared humanity. They analyze and reject emotional outbursts. Emotions, especially when displayed publicly, strike Sigmas as potential manipulations or signals of a lack of self-control. He might have seen coworkers use tears to sway opinions, or friends throw tantrums to guilt others into compliance. Concluding that such tactics are beneath him, he commits to controlling his own emotions, rarely showing anything but calm. While it prevents others from exploiting his feelings, it also denies him the warmth of shared emotional release. Over time, this near-permanent emotional lockdown makes him seem cold or even robotic, a figure who'd rather stay aloof than risk being lumped in with what he views as manufactured drama. They reject partial love or shallow bonds. Sigma males are notorious for walking away from relationships that fail to meet their standards. If they sense a partner is clingy, disrespectful, or just not intellectually compatible, they cut ties swiftly. Superficial chemistry in their eyes can't compensate for deeper incompatibilities. While this spares them from enduring toxic or hollow dynamics, it also bars them from the messy, iterative process of normal relationship growth. They'd rather have 0 partnerships than a half-baked one, so they end up alone more often than not. This high threshold for intimacy contributes to the aura of emotional distance that others perceive as cold-heartedness. They shoulder people's problems until they burn out. Despite his preference for solitude, a Sigma often finds himself solving others' issues, be it technical tasks at work or emotional crises. Friends dump on him, trusting in his calm presence. Initially, he might oblige, but repeated demands erode his patience. He doesn't ask for reciprocation, nor does he reveal his own burdens. The result is a quiet exhaustion. He feels used, especially when no one seems to notice his weariness. This resentment feeds a harsher worldview. He starts assuming people only approach him for utility, not genuine friendship. Over time, that festering bitterness can calcify into outright coldness, a shield against further exploitation. They consciously limit themselves from emotional bonds. To many, emotional connection is a comfort. For Sigmas, it's a risk-laden endeavor that can lead to manipulation or heartbreak. Instead of stumbling into emotional closeness, they actively limit how much affection or vulnerability they display. Whether that's never sharing personal stories or dodging deeper conversations, they keep an invisible wall in place. This cautious stance ironically fosters a self-fulfilling prophecy. The fewer bonds they form, the more alone they feel, which in turn justifies their belief that emotional ties aren't worth the risk. Each time they sense a chance at closeness, they clamp down, stepping away rather than letting anyone see the cracks in their armor. They dismiss shallow praise and vanity. A Sigma might appear utterly uninterested when people congratulate him on trivial achievements or shower him with hollow compliments. In his mind, these surface-level gestures reek of vanity, quick pats on the back that don't solve real problems or foster meaningful bonds. He can't help but see them as distractions that feed ego rather than growth. If coworkers host a party for a small milestone or shower him with superficial praise, he accepts it politely but remains unmoved. Over time, this indifference to shallow applause separates him further from typical social circles, leaving him colder to the idea of public recognition. He'd rather channel his energy into genuine self-improvement than bask in momentary vanity that, to him, rings hollow. They embrace a harsh moral code over forgiveness. Sigmas rarely trumpet their moral stances, but they do maintain a personal code that leans harsh and unbending. If someone crosses certain ethical or loyalty lines, they see no reason to forgive. They prefer to cut them off entirely. While society often promotes second chances and tolerance, the Sigma believes that bending such rules weakens his resolve. This unyielding approach can appear unforgiving, some might call it merciless. To him, it's consistency. Bending once signals that his moral boundaries aren't absolute. Over time, carrying this rigid code can desensitize him, hardening his heart against the pleas or regret of others, and reinforcing the cold image he projects. For Sigma males, the journey toward becoming cold-hearted isn't a mere phase. It's the outcome of their relentless independence, minimal tolerance for shallow bonds, and a survival strategy that discards anything that jeopardizes their self-reliance. From shunning half-formed relationships to cultivating an unbreakable moral line, they inch further from the warmth that most people crave. The result is a man whose discipline and solitude both protect him and deny him the softer edges of life. That's all in this video, soldiers. If you liked the video, consider subscribing to the channel.